standards can completely reshape your results, relationships, and reality. You rise or fall to the level you accept you do not get what you wish for you. Get what you tolerate. The life you have now is not the product of fate. It is the reflection of your standards, what you demand of yourself, what you refuse to accept. If a man accepts being average, then average is exactly what he will receive, not because he is destined for less, but because he stopped reaching for more. What is a standard? It is the line in the sand. It is the point at which you say, this is who I am, and this is what I stand for. When you raise it, your life begins to reflect that decision. But if you lower it, if you make excuses for poor behavior, delay your goals, or surround yourself with lesser influence, your life will follow in that direction. How do you begin to raise your standards? It starts with the smallest things. The time you wake up, the order of your room, the integrity of your word. Do you follow through? Do you clean up after yourself? You cannot command a great army if you cannot command your morning. Imagine this: a man wakes at dawn, irons his shirt with care, and writes 3 things he will conquer today, not because someone told him to, but because that is his code, that is his standard. How differently do you think he walks into the world than the man who rises late, stumbles into the day unprepared, and reacts instead of leads? Ask yourself, what have you been tolerating that must no longer be allowed? Who around you reinforces weakness instead of strength? What would happen if you declared, no more excuses? This is my new standard. Your life bends in the direction of your standards. Bend them upward. Everything else will rise with it. Standards define identity, not motivation. A man who waits for motivation will be governed by the weather of his emotions. But a man who lives by standard, he is a storm unto himself. Many people believe that success requires inspiration, but that belief is a trick. It implies that you must feel good to do good. Yet the most accomplished lives were not built by comfort. They were forged by resolve, by identity, by the quiet declaration, this is who I am. Even when I dawn, feel like it. You must decide what kind of man you are, not just in public, but in private. Are you the one who pushes forward when no one is watching? Are you the one who acts with discipline when no reward is promised? How do you build the identity? Through repetition, through keeping small promises, through holding your spine straight when it's easier to bend. Begin with one standard: I do not quit, or I keep my word, or even I walk into every room with purpose. Let that standard become your armor. Now picture this: a carpenter begins each morning sharpening his tools, not because he is told to, but because he knows dull blades build crooked houses. That carpenter builds a legacy, not by chance, but by code. What code are you living by? Or are you drifting? If I followed you for a week, what would your actions say about you? Raise the code. Make it your signature. Let no man mistake what you stand for. Change the floor, not the ceiling. Most men focus on raising their goals, the ceiling of what they hope to achieve. But what if the secret was not in raising the top, but raising the bottom? What is the lowest behavior you will accept from yourself? That is the true measure of who you are becoming. You do not rise to your goals. You fall to your rituals. Excellence is not born from ambition alone. It is born from standards so high that even your worst days outmatch another's best. Success belongs to the man whose worst day is still productive, still aligned, still filled with purpose. To elevate your life, raise your floor. Improve what your bad day looks like. Instead of collapsing into laziness, could your lowest point be reflection, writing, preparation? Could your fallback be studying instead of sleeping, speaking with grace instead of anger? Picture a soldier on the field who still polishes his boots, even after marching all day. He does not say, I am too tired. He says, this is the standard. What does your worst day look like? If you raise your floor by 20%, your life may change by 200%. Refuse to collapse. Refuse to spiral. Let even your stumbles carry strength, for your floor is the silent architect of your destiny. Standards attract allies and repel the weak. A man of standards becomes a beacon, not because he tries to shine, but because he refuses to dim. He does not clamor for attention or approval. Instead, he stands firm in who he is and what he expects from himself first, and then from others. The world around him may not always appreciate it. In fact, some will mock him, misunderstand him, or even try to break him. But those who carry strength in their bones and truth in their hearts, they will recognize him. For like finds like. You see, when you raise your standards, you send out a silent signal. This is who I am, and this is what I allow. The weak may call it arrogance, but the wise call it alignment. You will not attract everyone, nor should you. You will attract those who are meant to walk with you, not drag you. The man of standards does not chase validation. He builds value. His life becomes a monument not to popularity, but to principle. And principles outlast trends. They are not moved by the mood of the crowd. They are anchored deep within. When you live this way, you do not need to demand loyalty. You embody it. You do not beg for respect. You command it without saying a word. This transformation begins with refusal. Refusing to laugh at mediocrity. Refusing to excuse bad company. Refusing to remain silent when truth must be spoken. A man who holds his tongue in the face of compromise is not peaceful, he is passive. And passivity is a poison. To live with standards is to live with clarity. You speak what you mean. You mean what you say. Your yes carries weight. Your no creates boundaries. Even if it costs you comfort, it earns you strength. And strength, unlike comfort, builds kingdoms. Imagine a ship's captain. Would he allow men who disregard order to board his vessel? Would he tolerate those who disrespect the code, delay the mission, or jeopardize the journey? The sea is not merciful to the careless. Neither is life. A man of standards chooses his crew not by popularity, but by principle. Look around. Who in your circle is lifting you higher? Who is dragging you backward? What behaviors have you been tolerating that chip away at your strength? What if your standards became the filter through which you rebuilt your world? Here lies the deeper truth. You are not here to blend in. You are here to rise. And when you rise, others see a path they did to know was possible. Your courage gives them courage. Your standards give them something to reach for. In becoming who you are called to be, you become more than a man. You become a mirror showing others what they could be, if only they chose to live by code, not comfort. Do not lower the bar to make others comfortable. Raise it and see who grows to meet it. That is how leaders are born. That is how legacies are built. Pain is temporary. Standards are eternal. Comfort is fleeting. It disappears with the next wind like dust on an open road. But the man who sets a standard and lives by it, he builds something the seasons cannot destroy. He is not tossed by emotions, trends, or trials. He is anchored in choice, in discipline, in quiet defiance of all that seeks to make him soft. Most men wait for pain before they prepare. They wait for difficulty before they define who they are. And when challenge finally comes, they shrink. They scramble. They make excuses, but not the man who has chosen in advance. Not the man who has said, here is what I stand for. And no matter what happens, I do not move. Such a man expects the test. He welcomes it not because he is reckless, but because he is ready. You must understand this. Strength is not built in the storm. It is revealed there. The man who survives the tempest is the one who trained during the calm. Pain will come. Delay will tempt. Doubt will whisper. They always do. But these things cannot move the man who has already decided. His standard is not up for negotiation. He does not ask, should I keep going? When the path grows hard, he already answered that question long ago. You must set your standard when the winds are still, when no one is watching, when quitting would be easy, but you choose to continue anyway. That is the moment where legends are made. The lost man waits until pressure comes, then folds. The legendary man prepares in advance, then conquers. Picture the blacksmith. He does not craft weapons in silence and safety. He works in fire. Sparks fly. Iron resists. The hammer is heavy, but he does not complain. He does not stop. Why? Because the blade is worth it. The outcome is greater than the obstacle. What discomfort have you been avoiding? What dream have you delayed because it would require too much of you? Be honest. You know what it is. That one thing you keep pushing off. That one thing you say, one day. And what if you decided today, once and for all, no matter what, I do not break? That decision, that standard becomes your strength. It becomes your vault, your fireproof chamber of resolve. And in it, you store your greatness, your integrity, your grit. Guard it well. Feed it daily. And never let the ease of the world steal what only endurance can build. Comfort fades. Comfort lies. It tells you to rest when you should rise. It tells you you are safe when you're slipping. But character echoes through time. Long after your name is forgotten by the masses, the fruit of your standards will live on in the lives you touched, the work you did, the legacy you carved with blistered hands and unwavering focus. So I ask you, what are you building, comfort or character? Because you cannot have both. Standards do not limit your life, they lift it. They separate you from the ordinary. They give you a reason to rise when you could lay down. Set yours high. Set them now. And when the storm comes, and it will, you will not flinch. You will act, because you have already decided, and that my friend, is the mark of a man who conquers the seasons. Your standards must be public, not private. It is easy to say what you believe when no one can hear you. But true standards do not whisper in the dark, they proclaim themselves in the light. A man of real conviction does not keep his principles hidden in journals or silent prayers. No, he walks them out. He wears them like armor. He lets them speak louder than any argument, clearer than any boast. To build silently but live loudly is not arrogance, it is alignment. It is the integrity of a man whose actions echo his values. And in that echo, others hear the truth of who he is. There is no confusion, no misreading. He does not have to convince people of his strength. His consistency does that for him. A hidden standard cannot protect you. It cannot shield you when the winds rise. It cannot guide your steps in chaos. And it certainly cannot inspire others to follow. If you keep your values locked away, they will not grow. Worse, you will be tempted to compromise them when life gets heavy, when temptation knocks, when the pressure mounts. But when your standard is declared, when it becomes visible, audible, observable, you are bound to it. And that bond becomes your strength. How do you bring your standards into the light? You live them. You don't just speak them, you declare them through conduct, through discipline, through sacrifice, through showing up when it is hard, holding the line when it is lonely, and staying the course when quitting would feel easier. If you believe in discipline, let it be seen in the way you rise each day, in the way you dress, in the way you honor your commitments. If you value excellence, let it be evident in every detail, how you finish a task, how you treat others, how you prepare, how you recover, especially when no one is watching, especially when no one is clapping. Imagine a teacher walking into a classroom. His shoes are polished, his shirt is crisp, his back is straight. His presence quiets the room not because he barks commands, but because his very being commands attention. The students do not rise because they fear him, they rise because they respect the standard he has become. His code walks ahead of him, and by doing so, it lifts the entire room. That is what your standard must do. It must walk before you. It must introduce you before you speak. It must remain when you leave the room. Not because you shouted it, but because you've lived it. Ask yourself, what would change if those around you knew your standard so clearly, so visibly, that they began to rise to meet it? How would your workplace shift? Your family? Your friendships? What would happen if your integrity was not an idea, but a presence felt known, undeniable? A hidden principle dies in the dark. It fades. It weakens. But a public one lived out with dignity and consistency lives on. It outlasts the applause. It influences without effort. It builds legacies, not just lives. Do not be content with private beliefs. Let your life preach your philosophy. Let your habits be your message, because the man who lives his code out loud does more than change himself. He transforms the world around him. Standards must be decided in advance. When the moment of trial comes, it is too late to build your character. It is too late to prepare your values. It is too late to decide what kind of man you are. That moment must have already been chosen in silence, in solitude, in the still hours when no one was watching. The man who tries to think his way through temptation will falter, but the man who has already decided how he will act, he will not. This is the power of predetermined decision. It removes the need for debate. It removes the fog of hesitation. It removes the opening for doubt to creep in. When your actions are already decided, your path is already drawn. There is no gray. There is no internal courtroom filled with arguments and justifications. There is only the clarity of commitment. You must decide now how you will respond when offended. Will you strike back, or will you stand firm in composure? You must decide now how you will behave when tired. Will you cut corners, or will you complete the work with honor? You must decide now what you will never tolerate from yourself, from others, from life. If you do not set your rules, the world will set them for you. And the world does not reward the undecided. It consumes them. It shapes them into what is easy, not what is right. It fills the vacuum of indecision with chaos and compromise. Predetermined decisions are not about control. They are about freedom. The man who already knows what he will do is not bound by impulse. He is not controlled by his circumstances. He walks into every room with the authority of a judge who has already written the law. Picture that judge. Each day, he enters the courtroom not to deliberate what justice might be, but to execute what justice is. His laws are written. His standard is established. There is no room for guesswork. Because the law is clear, justice is swift. Because the standard is firm, order prevails. Where in your life have you left decisions open? Where are you still negotiating with your lower self? Where do you say, I'll decide in the moment, knowing full well that the moment is when you are weakest? The man who decides ahead of time lives in strength. He walks taller. He speaks with certainty. He is trusted because he has first learned to trust himself. But the man who waits lives in weakness. He reacts. He apologizes. He builds nothing lasting because he is always pulled by whatever wind blows. And every day you delay your standards is a day you borrow your life from circumstance. You become a man on loan to the moment, not a master of it. But that can end. It ends with one act. Decision. Decide now. Decide who you are. Decide what you do not tolerate. Decide what you rise for and what you never bow to. And once that decision is made, never borrow again. Because a man of predetermined principles cannot be bought, broken, or bullied. He is anchored. He is unshakable. And in a world that bends, he stands. Consistency builds power. It is not what you do once that shapes you. It is what you repeat, what you return to, day after day, decision after decision. Greatness is not found in rare flashes of brilliance, but in the slow, quiet, determined repetition of discipline. The man who becomes something extraordinary did not get there by accident. He chose it, not once, but 1,000 times. The oak tree does not rise overnight. It grows inch by inch, season by season, pushing roots deeper even when the eye sees nothing. The blacksmith does not forge a blade in one swing. He strikes and strikes, folding steel, applying heat, refining edge. And your life will not transform by a single moment of inspiration. You must practice. You must persist. You must do the right thing long enough for it to become who you are. This is the overlooked truth. Consistency is the hidden engine behind all success. It is not glamorous, it is not loud, but it moves mountains. Consistency builds habit. Habit builds confidence. Confidence builds identity. And once your identity changes, your future cannot help but follow. A man who shows up every day becomes unbeatable, not because he is the most gifted, but because he is there when others quit. He does not need motivation. He has momentum. His actions no longer require force. They flow from who he has become. Picture the farmer. He rises each morning and waters the soil, day after day, week after week. No sprouts, no praise. His neighbors laugh. They say he's wasting effort. But the farmer is not working for applause. He is working for harvest. And in due season, his field will bloom while theirs stand barren. The same is true for you. Are your habits worthy of the future you desire? What are you rehearsing each day, excellence or excuses? What is your routine building resilience or regret? Excellence is not a moment. It is a pattern. It is forged when you do the right thing without needing results to cheer you on. It is born in silence, tested in fatigue, and proven in time. If you wait to feel like it, you will never master it. If you wait for conditions to be perfect, you will never begin. Set a standard you can repeat. Something clear. Something small enough to begin, yet strong enough to grow. Then repeat it until your body does it without asking, until your mind stops resisting, until your environment adjusts to follow your example. Remember this. Consistency does not merely change what you do, it changes what you believe about yourself. Each repetition is a vote for the man you are becoming. Each act of discipline is a brick laid in the foundation of your character. You do not need to be perfect. You need to be persistent. You do not need to know the outcome. You need to know the process. And once the process becomes your way of life, the outcome will take care of itself. So begin again today. Begin small. Begin quiet. But begin, then do it again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next. Because the man who remains when others disappear, the one who shows up when no one is watching, is the one who earns what others only dream of. That is the power of consistency, and it is available to you right now. Standards turn vision into reality. A dream without a standard is fantasy. It may excite the imagination, stir the soul, and bring warmth to the heart. But without a code to guide it, it drifts like a ship without a rudder. A dream anchored to a standard, however, a code of conduct, a rule of life, becomes a plan. And when that plan is followed by consistent discipline, the impossible becomes possible. The vision becomes tangible. The dream becomes real. It is not enough to desire success. Desire is only the spark. You must build success with your bare hands, brick by brick, habit by habit, day by day. And the material you build with is your standards. Standards shape how you speak, how you work, how you rise from failure. Vision paints the picture, yes, but it is your standard that holds the brush steady. Without it, your strokes wander. Your momentum fades. Without standards, ambition withers under pressure. It dissolves under fatigue. It becomes a whisper instead of a roar. But when a man has a standard, The distant becomes reachable. The overwhelming becomes orderly. The mountain becomes a path, because he is not relying on emotion. He is relying on a code. A clear vision, tied to a non-negotiable standard, becomes a force of nature. You cannot stop a man who has both direction and discipline. His feet are guided by purpose, and his hands are trained by repetition. So decide what kind of future you want. Be specific. Be bold. And then ask yourself, what kind of man builds that future? What kind of character does he carry? What kind of habits does he honor each morning? What kind of attitude does he bring to failure? What kind of integrity does he guard when no one is watching? Because you will never outbuild your character. Your dreams rise only as high as your standards. No further, no faster. The foundation must be strong. Picture the architect. He sketches the outline of a cathedral, vaulted ceilings, towering spires, walls of stone and light. The drawing inspires, but inspiration alone cannot build it. Without measurements, without proportion, without rules, his vision remains ink on paper. But when he draws with standard height, width, depth, his vision becomes structure. His idea becomes something generations will walk through. That is what standards do. They turn dreams into buildings. They make the abstract concrete. They shape energy into architecture. So where have you been hoping instead of building? What parts of your dream have been left to emotion instead of execution? Where are you drifting when you could be directing? The scaffolding of your future is built with daily actions, with non-negotiables, with unwavering codes. And once you set them, once you say, "This is what I demand from myself," the world begins to conform to your direction. You do not need a new dream. You need a higher standard, one that lifts your days, sharpens your mind, and strengthens your heart. Raise it, write it, live it, and your dream will no longer feel distant. It will stand before you solid, measurable, earned. Because the man who lives by a standard does not wait for the future. He builds it. Your standard is your silent sermon. What you say may be heard once, but how you live, that is watched forever. Your standards preach louder than your words. In a world overflowing with noise, it is not the voice that commands attention, it is the example. An example, when consistent and principled, becomes a legacy. People do not follow explanation. They follow demonstration. They do not change because of lectures. They change because of leadership. If you want to influence others, don't raise your volume, raise your conduct. If you want to inspire, let your life do the talking. Let your daily decisions become the loudest message in the room. Words are important, but character is undeniable. Anyone can say the right